الرحمن الرحيم الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن.
Listen to this announcement, or else you run the risk of not eating anything. There are these orange tent cards on your tables. This is your ticket to a meal, essentially. And if you don't have one, you need to speak to this unpleasant fellow over here, who goes by the name of Sharif. So yeah, just give us a notice. The two choices are chicken piccata and butternut squash ravioli. And there is a right choice. Yes. Yeah. Also, the chicken is not halal. No, I'm kidding. The chicken is halal. I'm teasing Grace over here. The chicken's halal, everyone. It's safe. It's been slaughtered the proper way. They read bedtime stories to the chicken. They caressed it every evening. They petted it. They fed it organic food, and then they slaughtered it zabiha. And the butternut squash is vegetarian for the non-chicken eaters. The water that went, yes, and the water that went into irrigating the squash is halal, as Rafi just told me. Yes, alhamdulillah. You've been called out by this gentleman next to you. Is he your husband?
He is my husband, yes.
And where are you from?
We're from Houston.
Houston. Wow, mashallah. And how do you like Ohio? Oh yes, we got a lot of Texans. Texans is where we're starting the next khilafah, right? That's the headquarter.
I wouldn't trust that.
And what do you do, sir?
Just studying.
Studying like just random stuff? You just pick up random books or
Pretty much. No, just Islamic studies stuff.
Islamic studies? Okay. Yeah. Islamic studies, like at at an institution, or
Trying to get into a PhD.
all right. And who's your favorite sheikh?
The one that you think is the right answer.
Oh, okay, good. All right. All right. All right. Who else wants to introduce themselves? Let's say we don't. The people in the back never get any attention. Okay, you made eye contact, so I have to come over here now. All right. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam rahmatullah. I'm Noura. Chicago.
Chicago, nice.
Yeah, I'm from Turkey, but I live in Chicago.
MashaAllah. Okay, and what do you guys do?
What I do, we manufacture masjid carpet in Turkey. We import here and then we distribute it masjid carpet to masjids. Yeah, carpet you are praying on Usuli Center is our carpet.
The carpet we're praying on at the Usuli Institute, he wove that by hand over here. MashaAllah. You really slaved over that. I mean, we don't believe in slavery, but like you worked really hard.
We wave it with the heart, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Amazing. Fantastic. Chicagans and, Turkish. How do you say Turks? Yes. Why do I not know that? This is the table with friends on it over here. You guys look like you're a group. You guys all plan to come here together. You just randomly met here. Yes. I mean, all right. I already put you on the spot.
My name is Andalib. I'm from Maryland.
Okay, wow. The leaves there must be really nice right now. Okay, and what brings you to Usuli?
It's the best place for knowledge and meeting cool people.
MashaAllah. And you've met some cool people and some uncool people? Like Sharif. Thank you. All right. This is the man who abandoned his child to come to the Usuli Institute. All right. We're still waiting for people to show up. Assalamu alaikum. Timur.
They say if you make eye contact. Didn't work.
Timur.
Yes.
Right?
Assalamu alaikum. California.
California. Where in
yeah.
California?
Davis.
Davis. Okay, so do you believe in this whole NorCal, SoCal type of rivalry? Are you neutral? Like, where do you stand?
Neutral.
Okay, good. Alhamdulillah. But have you listened to some of the tafsirs? Neutrality is not a good thing. You're supposed to take a stand, a firm stand, take a principled position. So, do you change your mind?
SoCal.
Okay, good. Alhamdulillah. And what do you do?
I'm a tax auditor.
Oh my gosh, that sounds so boring. I'm so sorry. There's just nothing left for us to talk about. I have to move on. You're not a tax auditor. Okay, yeah. Okay, over here. You have a PhD. Yes.
No, it's a doctorate in social sciences. But with a focus in epidemiology.
All right. And can you tell us more about it? Everyone here wants to know what was your dissertation on, because I'm sure the crowd is, they're just dying to find out. All right, let's get you on the stage. You can start talking about it. We'll make a window for it.
I finished it in 2009, and so you kind of like put these things away and you never want to think about them again, but I think I'm like a little bit ready to talk about it. But basically it actually is related to kind of human trafficking. So I had a Fulbright to study my doctorate in Mexico, and I was researching women's vulnerability to sexually transmitted diseases in the migration process.
I mean, that's
The rest I probably can't even tell you.
I mean, human trafficking, definitely, that's something you could discuss at length with Sheikh. He has talked a lot about that. But yeah, I know the trauma of having just, done a dissertation. Yeah. All right, where is everyone else? I feel like there's a lot of empty chairs. People are either not hungry or they just don't care anymore. What happened? Is it me? Is it me? Am I turning people away? Why would you say that, Rashta?
Well, I have a long list that I can refer to answer your question, but to sum it up, you can be quite rude.
I'm rude?
You can be quite rude. I didn't say you are rude. I said you can be quite rude, and it's a bit jarring because we were not prepared or given warning as to this persona which you take on when you walk around with the freedom that comes and the responsibility that comes with the mic. One might even say it's a conscious, this is a battle, an ethical battle that you are in the midst of while you walk around with the power of your voice and speech. One might say that.
I gave the mic to the wrong person. I shouldn't have given it to you. You're right. Absolutely. This is a lot of power, and I've been trying to use it to speak truth to power. Because, I mean, I don't think anything that I've said is... thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, I have fans still. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right. Moving on from that, that was jarring, actually. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I know. All right, I'm gonna make one last announcement. The food tents, make sure that you have one so that you can get a meal. And now we are gonna have Sheikh Khalid Abul Fadl speak about the history of the Usuli Institute.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm not speaking about the history of the Usuli Institute. I am speaking more broadly about the history of the concept of Usuli, the idea of Usuli. You know, one of the things that we get quite often is, what does Usuli mean? And of course, among those who want to be difficult, they'll say, oh, you know, Usuli is proof that, you know, I don't know about other people other than myself, but the proof that this guy is Shia, because this is in reference clearly to the Usuli school versus the Akhbari school in the Shiite tradition. So I thought that it would be helpful to simply state very clearly why the word Usuli and where does it come from. Not just in the Shiite tradition, but in the Islamic tradition more broadly, including the Sunni tradition. An Usuli is a person, a faqih, a jurist, who specializes in either usul al-fiqh or usul al-din, which could be translated as specializes in either or both sometimes, the foundations, normally the theoretical, philosophical foundations of either or both Islamic law or Islamic theology. Increasingly, after the distinction between the two is rather blurry, most definitely until the 4th century Hijrah, so that it is fair to say that specializing in one also meant that you were specialized in the other. But increasingly, after especially the 4th Islamic century, so the 4th Hijrah, it increasingly, when the word usuli was used, it referred specifically to those who were trained and skilled in the methodologies of deducing law from foundational premises and foundational sources. So you will find throughout the Islamic traditions, Sunni and Shia, the word usuli referring to those who have specialized, studied, and specialized in Islamic jurisprudence. But what I had in mind is something even a bit more different by the word usuli than the traditional distinction between those who specialize in jurisprudential theory and those who specialize in everything else. And the closest that comes to this is my own teacher, Sheikh Muhammad al-Ghazali, when he wrote his very famous book, Sunnah al-Nabawiyya Bayn Ahl al-Fiqh wa Ahl al-Hadith. And in that book has been translated to English. We offer it in the Usuli bookshop. You can buy it through it's a bit pricey. It's $40 for the translation, but it's well worth it. And let me cut to the chase by telling you what my sheikh had in mind and what in turn I had in mind. Those of you who know anything about the history of Islamic jurisprudence, you would read that in the sort of like the story of creation, in the old early days, there used to be Ahl al-Ra'i, the people of, translated, the people of opinion, and Ahl al-Hadith and the people of traditions. And normally you would read that Ahl al-Ra'i were more or less, and I'm simplifying, the followers of Abu Hanifa, while the Ahl al-Hadith, depending on what source you're reading, it will say the followers of Malik, the followers of Shafi'i, the followers of Shafi'i student, Ahmad ibn Hanbal. But what they're getting at is that there were really, what they're getting at is that there was a difference between the methodology in approaching Islamic law between the school of Iraq and also the school of Cairo and the school of, and I'm talking here about the very beginning centuries of Islam, after the death of the Prophet ﷺ. The school of Iraq, the school of Cairo, the school of Sham, and the school of Medina and the school of Mecca. Medina and Mecca did not have exigent and a complicated social reality, or indeed an economic reality. And so their reliance on textuality was heavier, less problematic, while in urban centers like Kufa, Basra, later on Baghdad, of course, but Baghdad comes into the picture a bit later, Fustat, Cairo, Damascus, the phenomena of law was more complicated. It was not simply an issue of, do you find a hadith or can you find a text and then you slap a text on a legal problem and there you go. It couldn't work that way. And as a result, Muslim jurists had to rely on extra textual sources of law, including things like tradition, custom, a'raf, practice, legal systems or that belong to earlier people, other cultures, reason, interests, maslaha, public interests or notions of equity. But the challenge was, as it remains today, is that how can you unleash human creativity and unleash human problem solving, the ability of a human being to solve problems creatively and innovatively. Because if you're not solving problems very quickly, what happens? The law becomes irrelevant. And if the law becomes irrelevant, then people will find alternatives. And if people find alternatives, you've lost the war. And this is precisely what happened to our modern Islam, right? If you are not finding practical solutions, you're not coming up with creative solutions, people will say, well, salamu alaikum, I'll go find something else. Now, but at the same time, if you're going to give license to people to solve problems creatively, how do you make sure that you are still within the prism of Islamicity? If you give people, say, come up with whatever creative solution you want, then people will come up with maybe very creative solutions, maybe very good ideas, but also maybe that have solutions, ideas that have nothing to do with Islam whatsoever. So it's a human challenge. See how old it is? We're talking about over 1,000 years old. The human challenge of how do I create how do I solve a problem innovatively, creatively, while remaining anchored in legitimacy and authenticity? Now, because we learn very dumbed down versions of Islamic history, because I don't have a lot of time, so I have to be very succinct and stop my brain from exploding and, turning this into a UCLA class. It originates initially with Orientalists. Orientalists looked into Islamic history like the idea that the closing of the doors of ijtihad and that Muslims stopped thinking after the 4th century. That's an Orientalist idea. And Muslims then took it and repeated it like parrots because they're idiots and ignorant. Forgive me. Excuse me for being so insulting, but it's true. But similarly, Orientalists said, oh, well, Muslims sort of were shooting from the hip, and then Imam al-Shafi'i came, and Imam al-Shafi'i invented Usul al-Fiqh, and Muslims took the idea and repeated it like parrots. Although I am a Shafi'i, but that's a gross exaggeration and a grossly dumbed down version of history. Imam al-Shafi'i did not invent Usul al-Fiqh, and the problem was not solved with the birth of Imam al-Shafi'i or the writing of Imam al-Shafi'i. The problem became more nuanced and more sophisticated and transformed and took new shapes like everything in history. The same problems remain, same challenges confront human beings, but they transform and mutate and express themselves in a variety of institutional and sociological and anthropological formats. And to make a long story short, as Muslims struggled to solve that tension between creativity, the need for creativity, the need for innovative thinking, and at the same time, the need for authenticity and legitimacy, so that people are not just shooting from the hip and, whatever they feel like, they just slap the Islamic label on, like that's one of the, things that a lot of people who call themselves Muslim reformers, that's the problem with a lot of quote unquote reformative thought, is that it just slaps the Islamic label without seriously engaging Islamic thinking. What emerged in Usul al-Fiqh is very specific methodology that, and if you want to read more about it, we mentioned Taha Jabir Alwani yesterday. You can pick up Taha Jabir Alwani's short book on Usul al-Fiqh, and he talks about it, which is a short but succinct. طريقة المتكلمون, the method of al-mutakallimun, which Malikis belong to, Shafi'is belong to, some Hanafis, not a lot of Hanafis, but some Hanafis, and even Hanbalis like Ibn Aqil. And it cut across theological schools. So someone like Sahib al-Mu'tamad, Hassan al-Basri, who was a Mu'tazili, when you compare his book on Usul al-Fiqh, you will find that it is not that different from the approach of Sarakhsi, the Hanafi, to Usul al-Fiqh, and yet that is not that different from the approach of a Hanbali like Ibn Aqil in his text on Usul al-Fiqh. What is common to these three people from these very different schools of thought, Hanbali, Maliki, and Hanafi, and even if you add someone like al-Baydawi's text on Usul al-Fiqh, is that method of known as طريقة المتكلمون. What is طريقة المتكلمون? And here is the rub, and here is the critical point. طريقة المتكلمون honored and built itself, anchored itself on what Muslim jurists and scholars used to call al-muallim al-akbar or al-muallim al-kabir. Who is the great teacher? It is not, they weren't referring to the Prophet ﷺ, they were referring to Aristotle. That before you engage legal thinking, that was the state of, what shall I say, advanced legal thinking at their time, what was cool and hip and happening. What was cool and hip and happening is that if you were a proper legal mind, you study Aristotelian logic. Then after you study Aristotelian logic, you start conversing and discoursing upon law. Without showing that you've mastered Aristotelian logic, you're worth anything as a lawyer. And so you want to see an example of that? Take Al-Mustasfa by Hamid al-Ghazali, al-Shafi'i. The beginning of Al-Mustasfa, his introduction, is the demonstrative logical examples of Aristotle, of Al-Muallim al-Akbar, Aristotelian logic. Why? To learn how to think and to deduce from primary principles to derivative principles, to then from principles to application. Now, there's a big debate as to whether whether in fact that's the way lawyers think, or do they think that way after the fact? In other words, they find the legal solution and then work backwards. I'm not going to get into that. But what I care about is the discipline of when you are speaking on behalf of God, speaking in God's name, the title of one of my books, that you are not free to put God to the side and just use reason unfettered by divine commands. And at the same time, you are not to be imprisoned in the text where the text speaks through you, and the greatest gift that Allah ever gave to human beings, the intellect, is silenced. That in fact, God can only speak through the twin Qur'ans. There is the created Qur'an, and unless you're Mu'tazili, you would say the uncreated Qur'an, but I don't want to get into that. The created Qur'an is al-Khalq. And the supposed uncreated Qur'an, although I told you that I believe it is created too, is the text. There are two Qur'ans. And it is the conjunction of the two Qur'ans, which one Qur'an includes al-Khalq, which is the intellect, coming in what today we would call a dialectical process of engagement with the actual written text to produce speaking on behalf of the divine. So when I called the Usuli, I didn't want to say Ahl al-Fiqh. I know why my Sheikh used the word Ahl al-Fiqh and Ahl al-Hadith. Precisely because he wanted to avoid people coming and say, oh, you're Shia. So he said, well, maybe let's use something else. Let's use Ahl al-Fiqh. Okay. But what I am referring to is this duality, that you need the text because you need God's guidance, you need revelation. And at the same time, you read, I don't care about Aristotelian logic today. We're far beyond Aristotelian logic. But do any real jurist, any jurist who's worth their salt, especially if they're going to be a professor of law, do they need to study logic? Absolutely. Does a Muslim intellectual who purports to speak on behalf of God need to master modern epistemology, including philosophy and logic? Absolutely. Do they need to master the equivalent, what was equivalent to Aristotelian logic in our day and age? So do they need to read thousands and thousands of books to just speak on behalf of God? Absolutely. And that, my brothers and sisters, is what an usuli is. Now, my dream was to demonstrate this repeatedly with students that come and apply for fellowships, and you rigorously train them in methodology and drive them in crazy, and have people flunk out, and have people have nervous breakdowns, and people tear their hair out. That was my dream. I didn't get to torment anyone, and I'll tell you, I've learned a very hard lesson that if you are just a little bit hard on students in the United States, they give you the finger and they go declare themselves sheikhs anyway. And say, the heck with you, we don't need you and your learning. We'll just be a sheikh by virtue of the fact that we know Arabic or know some Arabic, and you and your books can go fly a kite. So I've had to learn to be a nicer guy, not quite nice, but But I can still fantasize, and I can still live the fantasy of the Usuli methodology that is based on rigor and long hours of learning and training and all of that. So it has nothing to do with, is this comparable to the Shia dynamics of the Usuli versus Akhbari? Absolutely. But in the Sunni world, it unfolded along the same lines of Usulis versus Ahl al-Hadith. Is it possible for an Ahl al-Hadith person to be an Usuli? Not a real Ahl al-Hadith. Not if you are truly loyal to the Ahl al-Hadith premises, because you would reject the very idea of real comprehension and understanding and the utilization of reason as an authoritative source for legitimate legality in speaking on behalf of God. Either you can decipher what I've said, or you could just read Ghazali's book, The Sunnah Between Ahl al-Hadith and Ahl al-Fiqh, and you get the same results. Okay, thank you very much.
Very much, Sheikh, for that very insightful lecture. Tonight's a fundraising banquet, so let's take this opportunity to at least begin to make Sheikh's fantasy a reality, hopefully. That's serious. And I will be hounding people to donate, so get ready for me to harass you. But just a reminder, the tickets, make sure you have a ticket so that you can get a meal. And next, we want to welcome to the stage Grace Song.
Assalamu alaikum. I was like, please, God, don't let me trip on my way up. So yesterday, when we were still at our Usuli offices, I told you that we're going to blink, and then I'm going to be saying, it was so nice to meet all of you, and I hope you had a good time. Well, we're not there yet. There's still more. But I just want to take a moment to just go, let's take a breath and slow time down, because I'm having such an amazing time. I haven't met everyone, but I've been hearing that everyone is meeting everyone else and having a fabulous time. And it's these moments that you want to savor them. You don't want them to just pass quickly. So thank you again for being here with us. So 30 years ago, this year, I converted to Islam. This was the start of my journey to Usuli. It was 1994, and I was fresh out of business school at Cornell University. I was working at a brand management job at Johnson & Johnson near Princeton, New Jersey. And little did I know that my future husband lived 10 minutes from me. But I wouldn't meet him until the following year. I had always believed in God, but came from a family of Taiwanese immigrants who believed that success meant money, privilege, and assimilating into white culture. My upbringing put me on a materialistic path, and I ended up at Cornell. Surrounded by a bunch of materialistic business school students, I had a meaning of life crisis, which led me to a faith journey. I checked out a book on Islam at the library. I started reading and talking to God, and 2.5 years later, I converted to Islam. My first year as a Muslim convert was confusing. I didn't know many Muslims, and I had never stepped foot in a mosque before. So once I did convert, I thought, time to go meet my people. And I went to the mosque. And as many of you know, it is not a wonderfully welcoming place for converts. And I got the distinct impression that they really did not appreciate my questions, like, well, if hijab is meant for protection, what happens when it makes you a target? And I learned that if I wanted to be a better Muslim, well, I really needed to wear a scarf. It was really different than what I was expecting, and maybe I didn't really know what to expect. But through books, I had fallen in love with the message of Islam, and I was surprised how Islam was everything I already believed about being good and beautiful. So my first year as a Muslim was a bit intellectually and spiritually stagnating. And then later that year, I went back to my 10-year high school reunion, and I reconnected with my classmate, who some of you may know, Asifa Qureshi, who's a professor in Wisconsin. And she gifted me some lecture tapes for my conversion. So I went back to New Jersey and started listening. These were tapes of the professors. And I started listening on my commute to work, and I was absolutely captivated. I thought, this is what brought me to Islam. And I felt I had to look him up because I wanted to study from him. And not knowing he lived 10 minutes from me, I discovered that he was actually at Princeton getting his PhD. So we met in a bookstore, which is now a Starbucks, unfortunately, and the rest is history. But that first day, we spent 8 hours together, and I got to ask questions to my heart's delight. And that night, I went home and I journaled, and I said, I feel like that was something that was really important. Like, I feel like I have the chance to be part of something big. And boy, was I right. The professor's approach to Islam was like a breath of fresh air to a suffocating person. And I knew way back then, 30 years ago, that this would be the way for Islam forward, or forward for Islam, and not just for Muslims, but for humanity. And I have never stopped believing that, and it became my life's passion. So, hold on, do I just press the button and go? Okay. All right, so this is our wedding day, me and Sharif, in 1995. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Okay. There's the professor and Sharif. And there's Sharif starting his book journey. So in a small, crowded apartment outside Princeton, New Jersey, these are iconic words. How many people recognize the iconic words? These are the first words to the search for beauty in Islam. And that's where we got married, in this amazing little apartment. I wish we had taken more pictures because it was really quite a place. So, oh, and actually one more slide. Who dat? This is the professor's brother. Circa 1995. Okay. So, great. So the search for beauty in Islam, I guess you could say that was actually the official start of my Usuli journey. And when we married, he had just finished writing the very first chapter of The Search for Beauty. So that The Search for Beauty is really a classic, and if you haven't read it yet, you can actually get it outside in the merchandise table. But this book changed my understanding of how to live as a Muslim. God is beautiful and God loves beauty. That was the premise of the book. And it's a simple heuristic that really captures the essence of Islam. If it's beautiful, it's of the divine. And if it's ugly, morally ugly, it cannot by definition be of the divine. And no one needs to tell you what is beautiful or ugly. Everyone already knows. But that's how you can intuitively know God and Islam. And that if you're going to seek the divine, you seek it by finding the most beautiful path forward in whatever it is that you're doing. So after we married, I was passionate about the professor's work. I was involved in the publication of all of his books and articles. I read everything, edited everything, and attended and recorded every lecture, khutbah, and conversation that I could. I created the Scholar of the House website, and then I created the Search for Beauty website. And this knowledge that I gained was clarifying and confidence building. And I learned to trust in a beautiful, loving, rational, reasonable God. And every time I saw something crazy or something I didn't understand about Islam or Muslims, I was blessed to have an in-house expert to explain what was going on. And I learned that knowledge made all the difference in my faith. The professor taught us all God gave us an intellect and God expects us to use it. And he also taught us there is no embarrassment in religion. No question is off limits. And it sounds a little bit silly, but just that simple awareness gave me the permission to think and to question, which as a convert was no small thing. And I asked so many questions that the professor at one point had to give me a daily question quota, and that's a true story. So to sum up my journey to that point, really it was about darkness to light. Coming to Islam was about leaving the darkness and coming to the light. My journey to Islam had given me a way back to God, and it transformed my life. And it's the journey to Islam alone is very, very difficult. There are always so many obstacles to overcome. And it's incredibly hard to be Muslim, but it's something else altogether to choose to be Muslim. And for me personally, because my parents literally thought I was joining a cult or signing up for modern-day slavery, I was estranged from my family for 8 years because they really could not accept my decision to become Muslim. But honestly, it was the greatest gift that God had given me and in truth, my family. And as I have said many times in this day and age, it really requires a divine intervention to become Muslim. And my family and I, thank God, alhamdulillah, have long since repaired our relations, and now they are literally among our greatest supporters and admirers. But the way that my family transformed was inconceivable at the time and truly has been miraculous over these years. So in the professor's work, he often talks and writes about cleaning the vessel. And if you want to be a vessel for God, which I absolutely did and absolutely do, you have to start by doing some serious internal cleanup. And let's just say I had a lot of cleaning to do. But I also had to prepare myself to be a vessel. And meeting and marrying the professor was part and parcel of that. I had permission to think and question. I had gained knowledge and an education that built my confidence and reason in Islam. And I had this powerful heuristic of beauty versus ugliness. And this was the start of a continuous journey that never ends, but which definitely gets easier over time. So then in 2017, with the rise of Islamophobia, we founded Usuli to try and push back. We didn't know where it was going to lead, but we felt we really had to try. And in the last 7 years, I am proud to say we have done some really great things. We've been offering virtual khutbahs every week since January of 2019. We took 3 years to complete Project Illumine, ethical deep dives into every chapter of the Quran, and which completely opened our eyes to how the Quran is speaking to us in our time and what we need to do as ethical Muslims in 2024. We launched our own imprint and have published 4 stunning books in 2 years, thanks to the brilliance of Joseph Linhoff, one of our Project Illumine fellows. We produced 2 music albums by the gifted Vitska Marison, who couldn't be with us tonight because she's doing amazing things in Indonesia. And we continue to offer powerhouse khutbahs, now with 2 additional superstars at the pulpit, Shayan Parsai and Sharif Abul Fadl, also among our Project Illumine fellows. And to me, they are the hope of the next generation. And I am especially proud of our work to address the genocide in Palestine. On the night of October 7th, 2023, we held our first of many Palestine events, and this week, on the year anniversary of the genocide, we launched our book, The Palestine Sermons. These are all incredible wins. And looking ahead, we have great things in the pipeline. So we have the Sira Project, which we plan to begin recording next month, and for release starting in January. We have the publication of the entire Project Illumine Tafsir, a multi-volume work with the first volume slated to come out in 2025, inshallah. And this will likely take 10 years to complete, even if we do a volume a year. That's very ambitious and amazing. And the eventual publication of the Sira Halakas after the Tafsir. And somewhere in there, we want to finish and also publish the Book of Illuminations Halakas that we started. And so I'm sorry, Joe, I know he has already promised us his entire lifetime to finish all of this work, but I think he's happy to do it. And I'm also pleased to announce for the first time, we actually have not mentioned this anywhere yet, the Usuli Music Fellowship. And to continue our efforts to support Muslim artists, I'm proud to announce that we are launching the Usuli Music Fellowship, which is going to be under the direction of Vitska Marison, to encourage and support Muslim musicians in the United States for this year, and to give the same opportunity that Vitska had in producing and professionally recording her music. And we'll share more information in the future on that very soon. And of course, all the stuff we've been doing, the real talks, the halakas, there's so much, and there's so much we would love to do if we had more resources also. So to me, this is beyond exciting. And the fact that you are all here this evening tells me that we are doing something right. And you all made a very big decision to come here. I mean, you took 4 days out of your life. You spent hard-earned dollars to come to Columbus, to be with us, to meet us in person. That is no small decision, and for that we are extremely grateful and honored. And the title of this talk, my talk, is Our Usuli Journey, but the truth is that each of you has your own Usuli journey that brought you here tonight. And I'm sure that if I asked you what brought you to Usuli, or how did you find Usuli, that you would probably remember and have a really good story to tell me. And I've heard so many since I've been talking to all of you. But allow me to speak to what I believe the Usuli journey represents for us all, as well as for me personally. So Islam is about truth with a capital T. But with the state of the world today, it feels like God, the Quran, and Muslims are completely irrelevant. We're silenced, we're expendable, we simply don't matter. Muslims don't see that a deep engagement with God's book or God's ethics would make a difference, would give them strength, or give them the means for liberation in our dark world. We at Usuli spent 3 intensive years digging deep into every chapter of the Quran, with Dr. Abul Fadl as the eminent tour guide, pointing out the connections, the deeper meaning, and the way to apply true Quranic ethics to the complex issues before us today. We learned that each surah has a unique and timeless moral message, and that Quranic ethics are timeless, and that to be ethical Muslims, we have to apply those ethics to whatever time and place we live in. Dr. Abul Fadl has made the Quran literally come alive for 2024 and made it relevant for future generations to come. He has shared his vulnerable personal journey with God's book and opened up the Quran for all of us to see in a way that it has not been seen before. And he has invited us into his intimate space with God. And what an invitation. The few of us who have accepted that invitation did not come out the same people as when we entered. But it's an invitation, an open invitation for every human being out there, because that 3-year journey lives on YouTube and it's accessible for anyone for free. But the Project Illumine Tafsir is at the foundation of everything we do at Usuli. Here we seek the truth. And as Muslims, we understand that the way to truth is through the Quran. And through Project Illumine, we see the Quran with a new ethical lens. This is the truth for people who want the truth. For me personally, if I were to sum up what my own journey has meant to me and what God has given me in these past 30 plus years, I would sum it up with truth, enlightenment, and empowerment. So Islam took me from darkness to light, and I found truth with a capital T. God brought the professor and I together, and I got an education of a lifetime. Gave me confidence in my faith, in reason, and in beauty in Islam. And Usuli gave me enlightenment and empowerment. It gave me the Quran. The Project Illumine Quranic commentaries literally changed everything. Like I feel like I never really knew the Quran before, and I could never have known the Quran deeply without these commentaries. So to say that that 3-year journey was life-changing is simply an understatement. And Usuli also gave me personally empowerment. It gave me also a conviction that we are all created with a unique potential that must be unleashed in the service of God and goodness. And I felt that Usuli unleashed me. I found my calling. I found it through speaking and through writing and creating the Usuli Press imprint. And all of this has been an absolute dream come true for me personally. I have learned and grown so much. So it seems like all was good, right? But then came the genocide. And in this last year, God said, we're not done. There's more. And God had other plans for me, more lessons to learn. So the genocide changed everything in the world, in our homes, and for me personally, everything in the most unexpected way. Earlier this summer, the professor shared on the pulpit that all of the darkness, the evil, and the gruesome images coming out of Gaza triggered him to the point that it was too much to handle. He was not eating, he was not sleeping, he was really just in bad shape, as many of us were. Barely in his 20s, the professor had experienced what the men in Palestine are experiencing now, torture and extreme trauma. And for the last 40 years, the professor had channeled that extreme trauma into a life dedicated to human rights and eradicating torture. But in 2024, we all see that torture is alive and well and thriving. God exploded everything in our lives and pushed each of us to a place where we needed to confront our individual trauma and figure out how to deal with it. There is no shame in trauma, I learned. There is no shame in admitting that you need help. And Muslims right now have more trauma than anyone right now. This was to me God's way of showing me the new frontier for myself and also for Usuli. At Usuli, we have always taught that the point of Islam and the Usuli journey is to find enlightenment, empowerment, and liberation. I had found enlightenment and empowerment, but liberation was the final frontier. So God taught me this year that change comes from within, and I had an epiphany in all of this. So I will tell one last story. 2 weeks ago, I went to my 40th high school reunion. I hadn't been to a reunion in 30 years, not since my 10th year reunion. And every 5 years when they would announce reunions, I would cringe and feel anxiety and fear. And I didn't want to go back because I had so much shame over my high school and college years. So I avoided reunions for 30 years. And every time I would go back to California to visit my parents, I would literally worry, like, what would I say if I ran into someone from high school? So this year, when they announced the 40-year reunion, part of me really wanted to go. But I was still scared and still stuck in my head. So I went on a walk, and I was thinking about this, and I started to cry. Please, God, I'm tired of feeling so sad and so much shame. Part of me really wants to go because I'm proud of who I've become. I want to hold my head high in dignity, and I don't like the idea that people who knew me think that I went off the deep end because I became Muslim. So all of this Usuli learning, and it was still not enough for me to overcome my fear and anxiety about going to my stupid high school reunion. There was more work that I needed to do. And it was around that time that I had started doing my own trauma work. And so long story short, God literally cleared all the logistical obstacles, and there were a lot of them, for me to attend. And also God put the resources in front of me to do the hard work of facing my childhood trauma. And it was as if God was saying, I heard your prayer. I did my part. Now you do yours if you really want to go to your reunion. So I dug in and I did the hard work. I learned about the impact of trauma. I journaled, I prayed, I cried. I reached out to others for help. I got vulnerable. And to my surprise, God answered my prayers. And the pain and shame that I had been carrying for 30 years was lifted, and I made it to my reunion. And it was literally beyond all expectations. And I was even asked to give a speech, which I did. And of course, I talked about Usuli. So, thank you. So what did I learn, and what was my epiphany? Well, remember how the prophet, peace be upon him, tells us that there is the little jihad and the big jihad. Jihad means struggle. A little jihad and a big jihad, and how the hardest struggle of all is the big jihad, the struggle with the self. Well, my epiphany was that for all the times I had heard that statement, I had not stopped to really think about it. It occurred to me that Muslims are very good at focusing on the small jihad and avoiding the big jihad. But why? Isn't the big jihad where the gold is, so to speak? So I learned that if I wanted to go the whole distance, to find truth, enlightenment, empowerment, and liberation, I couldn't leave out the big jihad. And it's the big jihad because it's really hard, but it's also where I found that liberation, that last frontier that I was looking for. And what is liberation? It's the freedom to do what my personal relationship with God calls me to do, and to do it with love, and to trust in God, and to feel free and safe to be me, my authentic self. And with that comes the permission to be fully human, to be unleashed, to serve God and goodness with everything you have. And in my experience, when you do that, God is with you. So I learned that there is no shame in not having all the answers. There's no shame in making mistakes, not knowing everything, and not being perfect. No shame in struggling with faith, the Muslim community, and most importantly, with yourself. We're human, and that's the point. But we have God, and as Muslims, we have the truth. We can have the truth if we do the work. Life is precious, and countless lives are lost every day across the Muslim world. We are here watching those images and we feel helpless, but we are not helpless. We are alive and we are able to make change. So let me give you some Usuli examples. When the genocide began, Joseph Linhoff, our editor extraordinaire, channeled all of his angst and upset into creating the manuscript for the Palestine sermons. On the 1-year anniversary, with God's aid, we were able to finish this book in time for the conference so you could buy it here. And the official date of publication is October 7th, 2024. That was not planned, but a gift from God. And Joe is leading the charge to turn the entire Project Illumine body of work into an amazing published collection. He has been unleashed and wants to dedicate his life to Usuli Press. Our job is to find the way to support him and make sure he doesn't ever have to find another job. Cheyenne Parsai has ingested the entire Project Illumine Tafsir whole and is making his own brilliant interventions that are absolutely stunning and insightful. And you see that on the Prophet's pulpit when he delivers fiery khutbahs. He has been unleashed, and he gave up a lucrative career as an attorney to dedicate himself to mining God's book. Our job is to find a way to keep him here so he doesn't ever have to go back to being a lawyer. And Rami Kuja despite how much good-natured ribbing goes on between him and everyone at Usuli and everyone in my family and everyone he meets. I love him. Is one of the most brilliant Islamic intellects of our time. His expertise is the thought of Muslim philosophers when Islam was at the height of human civilization. And despite his degrees from Princeton and Stanford Law School and Oxford and UCLA, in our Islamophobic world, an academic post for him is not a guarantee. If Usuli had the funds, we would love to scoop him up so he could dedicate that intellect to God's service. This is what we're doing at Usuli, and we need your help. We need the help of as many people as believe in this path as possible. We would love to raise as many funds as we can to keep this operation going and to unleash more Muslims, whether they work with us or whether they simply learn from us. So now you've seen us, you've followed us, you've supported us, you've come here, you've met us in person, you've seen our new space, you've seen what we were able to do with very modest funds relative to many other organizations. We are trying to build an impressive Muslim organization based on the Quranic ethic that we learned in Project Illumin. In these last 2 days, I am absolutely blown away by all of you and how the community can come together in beauty and love and respect. And I think we have all built something here that we can be extremely proud of. And we would like to continue to build something beautiful, sustainable, and lasting for our kids and the next generations to come. And as we look forward and continue to dream and create and stand up for truth, please help us build and tackle the next frontier, which comes with truth, enlightenment, empowerment, and liberation. Thank you very much. Sorry, I had one more thing to say. So this is a fundraising dinner, and I just, I've already heard from some extremely generous anonymous donors that we have a matching campaign. So up to $50,000, and maybe potentially I have to ask another person. But this is really exciting. May God bless you. And so for every dollar that you can support us with, it's already matched up to $50,000. So thank you very much. May God bless you, and may God exponentially return whatever it is that you can provide and support, whether it's time, money, prayers, love, anything. So may God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Grace. You've each here gone to see little snapshots of Sheikh and Grace, and for someone who's spent, I've known them for a long, long time, but spent a lot of time in the last 3 years with some of the folks here. You don't really know truly how remarkable and special of a person Grace is. This Usuli Institute, it is the brainchild of Sheikh Khad Abul Fadl, but it would not have been born, so to speak, without the work and efforts of Grace Song. So thank you very much. Okay, and now for some more mundane announcements. Make sure that you have one of these tickets if you want to get a meal. There's only the vegetarian option left. On the back of it, there's a QR code. You can scan that on your phone to make donations and then put it inside the envelopes on your table. And Sheikh has just told me in confidence that he has completely changed his mind about wealthy Egyptian people. So just putting that out there for the record. But yes, Maghrib is at 7, and enjoy your dinner. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for your attention. We're going to resume the programming right now, so that's why I have taken hold of the mic. And are you going to get up on stage first, or? Yeah, we're going to get started, yeah. Hello, Sheikh. I am a nice guy. Actually, you know what? People, there's even people who have been so generous as to open up their homes and invite me to them. like Sharif and Rosaria, but yeah, different Sharif, of course. All right.
Rami has to be nice because he's staying at our house, and we could kick him out at any moment. But Sharif, well, I guess, I don't know. So I am so honored at this point to introduce our next speaker. She is a superstar by every single standard on the planet. So she's a beautiful person. We've known her now. She came with us on the Project Illumine journey. She is from Palestine. The minute that October 7th hit, she just was dealing with the trauma, the everything, right? I mean, the world changed. But she rose above that and said, yes, I will come to Usuli and let's do a program that first night. So she came, you know, she educated us, she helped us understand what was happening, gave us context, and did that many, many more times. And then she went viral also because she would show up at the Columbus City Council and, you know, constantly, you know, ask, like, why are we not doing more to either call for a ceasefire or stand up for injustice? And she's just an example for all of us. And we're so blessed and lucky to have her in our orbit. She's just, you'll see as soon as she gets up here, we asked her to come and share because, you know, on this 1-year anniversary, there's a lot that happens, you know, there's a lot that the Palestinian people in diaspora have to carry, and they really by definition end up like in leadership positions, and they lose so much, but they show up, and Jana is one of these amazing people. She's smart, she's brilliant, she's a senior immigration attorney on the side, which is like kind of 3 full-time jobs. So it's like doing that plus, you know, trying to stand up for social justice. But I'm going to let her speak, and so you can see for yourself how amazing she is if you haven't already watched a lot of our programming. So I'm so honored. I'm so pleased that she accepted this invitation. Jana Al-Akhras, please come up.
Assalamu alaikum. I am truly honored to be here today, to share this space with all of you, to build community with all of you, and to be entrusted with your attention. When I thought about what to say today, I knew I was going to speak about Gaza, that the conference would fall along the 1-year anniversary of the day that completely changed my life was an obvious choice. But I struggled with what to say on the anniversary of a year of genocide. So in preparation, I did a review of the year. And I realized while I was doing that review that today, October 12th of 2023, so it's been 1 year since Israeli forces issued an order for 1.1 million Palestinians in North Gaza to move to the south within 24 hours. I remembered how I felt that day. See, my family was forcibly expelled from Palestine in 1948 in a moment that Palestinians refer to as the Nakba, the catastrophe. My father's family is from Al-Khalil, Hebron, and my mother's family is from Ain Karim, Al-Quds, Jerusalem. And I remembered my grandparents who would often tell us about surviving the Nakba in a way that any human being can survive a catastrophe. And they spoke about how when they were fleeing their homes, they heard over loudspeakers, "Uhrubu," run, before what happened in Deir Yassin happened to you. And in 2023, I saw my people, yet again, old, young, disabled, walking with their belongings in the same type of death march that my grandparents described. And I thought to myself, surely, that these scenes and the impossibility of a 24-hour evacuation order would be the line, that this would wake us all up. I don't know if you've ever thought about how impossible it is to move 1.1 million people from a space within 24 hours. But I came to realize over the course of the year that in the human consciousness of most people, red lines are more gray than they are red. And we can all be deluded into thinking that something would be done because somebody else was going to do something. And 2 days prior to watching a live-streamed Nakba, a catastrophe, I called around to my local masajid, my mosques, and I asked what they would be doing in order to support Palestine, in order to support Palestinians, in order to support the Gazans in their own communities. Would they be speaking to their congregations? Would they be offering community support? Would they be encouraging people to support the college students who so often are on the front lines of these fights? And for all of my troubles, I received a voicemail in response. And I keep it on my phone as a reminder, and the message said, Sister Jana, as you know, the masjid is a religious institution, and we support our brothers and sisters with dua, but we don't get involved in political activities. Thank you for your understanding. It's about a minute of a voicemail. And 3 days later, I attended Jum'ah at the Usuli Institute on October 13th. The very same day that Israeli settlers opened fire on worshippers leaving Friday prayer in Hebron, Al-Khalil, my hometown. And Sheikh Khalid Abul Fadl said, those who sit on the sidelines watching their brothers and sisters in Gaza get butchered, you are not my brother, you are not my sister, and I will meet you as my opponent in the hereafter. You are not my brother, you are not my sister, and I will meet you as an opponent in the hereafter. I want you to consider the stark difference in those statements. I want you to consider the difference in those statements, and I want you to think about, what do our religious institutions, what are they supposed to do? Who are they supposed to serve? And what are they supposed to stand for? I am of the opinion that Palestine is the litmus test. That if you are unable to unequivocally support Palestinian self-determination in the face of Israeli occupation, that you are unfit and unable to form coherent moral thought. And because I so firmly believe that, I have been able to see how Gaza has exposed every single one of us. Gaza has exposed the hypocrisy, the complacency, and the indifference that overtakes us when the victims of oppression have been so dehumanized as to not warrant a proper reaction. The dehumanization and this willingness to be mentally colonized. It is why we spent the first 3 months of a genocide being forced to begin every statement with a condemnation. It is why we don't demand more of our mosques, and it is why we are still having conversations about who to vote for in November. I was at a political fundraiser recently, and the top of the ticket was something that sparked discussion. As I sat there and people around me spoke about, their moral quandaries and how to square this political circle, I eventually spoke up, and the response I received yet again, Sister Jana, there are 2 billion Muslims. We can't agree on anything. And I pushed back, and I said, I am asking you as a Muslim to agree on a principle that we all claim to understand. And I'm just asking that we implement it. It has been 1 year, and we have all lost 200,000 family members. We have all lost 200,000 family members. I need you to know that. I need you to know that Palestinians are not sacrificial lambs for the slaughter, that our lives are as valuable as yours, and that their resistance is not superhuman. Palestinians do not resist because they want to. It is necessary. They resist because they have no other choice, and I need you to understand that you too have no other choice. Gaza has exposed us. It has demanded that we put our thoughts into words and our words into action, but can we honestly say that we have? A Muslim is dedicated to justice, even if it is against themselves, even if it challenges their preconceived notions, their prejudices, and their firmly held beliefs. It has been 1 year of genocide, and I continue to ask myself, what am I willing to sacrifice? At minimum, am I willing to decenter myself? See, it's been very difficult to process the news and the images coming out of Gaza. I've found myself angrier than I've ever been in my entire life. I've found that my sorrow knows no bounds, that it has no limitation to what it is that my body can feel, and I didn't know it was possible. And anyone who values their mental health in an organizing space knows that often in order to continue the fight, in order to continue your advocacy, you must find ways to regulate these emotions. But the difficulty with that regulation is that often regulation means shutting it out. It means taking a break. And I considered how I could do that. Because and how I could justify that as a Palestinian, as a person whose refugee status is inherited. I often wondered, how could I justify that emotional regulation that I needed? Because I so firmly believe that the duty of a Muslim is to at least bear witness to injustice and suffering. And I found myself wondering, as I thought about my own feelings, how, after a year of genocide, Gazans haven't succumbed to complete and total numbness. Yesterday, I saw a video of a psychologist in Gaza speaking to an injured child. The child had a bandage and she was bleeding and she was holding a balloon. And the psychologist was explaining to her that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created humans, He gave them something called masha'ir. He gave them emotions. And she starts to explain the emotions. She says there's sa'ada, there's joy, there's happiness, there's pain, there's sadness, but there's also fear. And she says, fear is what you're feeling, isn't that right? And the little girl replies, yes. And the psychologist, goes on to say it's important to know how to deal with fear. And she asks her, do you think that fear has a benefit? And the girl says, yes. And the psychiatrist says, yes, for example, if I feel fear, if I'm standing in front of a lion, if I see a lion, I get scared, I run and I protect myself. So when I know, too, there is a bomb nearby and I feel fear, my fear has protected me and it's told me to run. So I watched that video nearly 10 times. I was amazed by the way that she was able to validate this child's fear, remind her that God gave her this feeling so she could protect herself, and then offered her whatever form of emotional regulation really one could offer under the circumstances. And then I thought about my own feelings and my own anger and what God wants me to do with that anger. What I'm supposed to do with this feeling, what this feeling should be signaling about the world around me, because these feelings should alert you to something. They should alert you that there is something so deeply wrong, something so deeply troubling that we are all living through. But it is not my job to be hopeless. So I have an obligation, a God-given obligation, and it is not one that I can easily excuse myself from, and you too, in that same vein, have an obligation to testify to truth, to history, to principles, not just for Palestine, but for your very soul. Aaron Bushnell burned himself alive in an effort to wake us up. It has been a year of genocide, and I'm asking, if your faith doesn't compel you to do something, what purpose does it serve? I no longer spend time trying to force the blind to see or the dead to wake. That is a power reserved for God. What I spend my time on is rooting myself in awareness and my principles, and I hope that that informs my actions. The current situation in Gaza is catastrophic. Israeli shelling and airstrikes have damaged more than 65% of the structures in Gaza. 70% of Gaza's road networks have been damaged. The mines advisory groups have estimated that tens of thousands of unexploded bombs remain in Gaza, and the removal of one single bomb can take more than a month. As of July, the war produced an estimated 990 million cubic feet of debris, and cleaning it would take 15 years. Other estimates say that it will take 80 years to rebuild all of Gaza's destroyed infrastructure. The devastation is the worst we have ever seen in the modern age, made possible by a combination of advanced weapons, sadistic policy, and collective apathy. We know what is in store for Gaza. And as long as a single Palestinian draws breath, there will be resistance to Israeli extermination's campaign of Palestinians. So that their fate may be sealed. But what about your own fate? We know what's going to happen to Palestinians for the next 80 years. We know, we have the numbers, we have the metrics, we know. But what about you? In Arabic, the word for martyr is shaheed. And if you know anything about Arabic and Arabic grammar, most Arabic words come from a 3-letter root. And so for shaheed, it comes from the word shahada, to witness. So when you call someone a shaheed, when you call someone a martyr, it is as though you are saying that the body becomes the witness to the injustice. The body is the witness to the injustice. Palestinians are sacrificing their bodies. They are bearing witness to this injustice, to this slaughter, to this devastation. So what is your role? My role, as we sit in the comfort of our homes, unburdened by the threat of extermination. To the Americans in the room, and I know we have a lot of people from a lot of spaces, I would like to remind you as an attorney, this country, its laws, its freedoms, they're merely aspirational. They are only actualized if we defend them, if we demand them, And defending these rights is an active choice. Complacency, silence, and fear result in what we have now. Institutions stifling dissent and threatening those who speak truth to power. And while America absolutely has no moral conscience and no moral center, I believe that its citizens may. And for Muslims, being Muslim is powerful. It's a powerful thing, and it can be a practice in courage if you allow it to be. As Muslims, we are tasked with embodying godly qualities. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in a hadith Qudsi, I am as my servant thinks of me. How do you think about God? How do you think about God? Allah has 99 names. Allah, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, Al-Malik, Al-Quddus, Al-Salam, Al-Mu'min, Al-Muhaymin, Al-Aziz, Al-Jabbar, Al-Mutakabbir. 99 names, 99 attributes. Are any one of those names describing a being that is vindictive, that is separatist, that is petty, that is racist, that is cowardly, that is fearful? I don't serve a petty God. I serve a God that demands that I focus. Perhaps it is our focus that needs to shift. I ask you as Muslims, are we really divided by theology? Or is the real tension between those who are willing to resist and those who succumb to Western imperialism? Know that your history, your faith is rooted in truth. Learn to recognize when your pressure is working, when media outlets start shifting their tones, when people squirm because they're unable to continue to defend the atrocity, when politicians are begging for your votes. And have the courage to remember that their betrayal was real, and put your energy behind those whose moral compass does not point in a direction other than justice. I ask you to consider the words of Muhammad al-Arda, who after digging his freedom out of Gilboa prison with spoons, he was in an Israeli prison, he dug his way out of an Israeli prison with spoons in September of 2021. And when he came out, they asked him, and he said he did it to show that the occupation is a mere illusion made of dust. We have power, and we are on a timeline to actualize it. Because what we allow in Gaza will eventually happen everywhere. I thank you all for your time and for your attention to a free Palestine in our lifetime, inshallah.
I think you'll agree with me that that is one of the best things I've heard this year. Thank you so much, Jana. Just another round of applause. Okay, well, I'm so grateful for being able to provide a platform where you can hear that. I don't know where else you can hear something like that. But I want to take this opportunity actually to announce something that we have been thinking about for a long time that we felt was really important for this moment in time. We have created something called the Usuli Human Award. So the typical award is meant to honor and distinguish an individual by the excellence of their achievements, be it in sports, science, or the arts. Far less common is the award that honors an insistence on rising above hardship with dignity, strength, and perseverance, representing us all as a society. As Muslims in the West, we have all struggled this year with maintaining the status quo in our daily lives as the trauma of this genocide unfolds. Despite the fact that Palestinians in diaspora, are suffering to a far greater extent, they have also taken responsibility for leading the way for Palestinian liberation. Their strength and resilience has filled us with hope and purpose and empowered our resolve to never give up on the Palestinian cause and our beloved Masjid Al-Aqsa. This year, both the Columbus and Usuli community relied on one such graceful and courageous Palestinian woman. On the very day of October 7th, we at Usuli invited her to speak at a spontaneous discussion before our supporters to make sense of such a critical moment in world history. Despite having to process it all herself, she answered the call without hesitation and spoke with deep insight, passion, and hope. She made herself available for several more programs for Usuli each more brilliant and illuminating. As a senior immigration attorney, she balanced directing her staff while serving hundreds of vulnerable asylum seekers from Yemen, Syria, Mauritania, Sudan, and other war-torn countries. This year, she has won numerous complex asylum cases in unforgiving jurisdictions. Most notably, she represented a Sudanese man who fled the Darfur genocide, saving him from deportation back to the horror of the Sudanese civil war. As a lifelong organizer, she was among the first to be called into action by the Columbus community. She helped organize and delivered impassioned speeches at protests and to the city council. For months on end, after each workday, she sprang into action using her powerful voice and masterful oratory to demand accountability from local government, took endless meetings with government representatives, spoke at law schools about international law and occupation, and the list goes on. During the student encampments, the students relied on her to advise them with strategy and legal counsel. She obliged with body and mind on the front line and protected students and community members as they were attacked by police and hauled off to jail. Despite being attacked by the police herself, at great personal risk, she protected students by preventing the police from confiscating their phones and personal belongings. Thereafter, she spent all night working tirelessly to locate all the arrestees, including her husband, waiting at the jail until they were all released the following morning. Despite the lack of sleep, she drove multiple people home from jail, and then she joined a team of attorneys who took on nearly 50 cases pro bono when the students were charged for criminal trespass. The legal team worked all summer to get the charges dropped and were finally successful after many months. Throughout this entire year, this Palestinian woman has displayed the courage to rise above hardship with dignity, strength, and perseverance. She is immensely humble and ready to serve any role, however minute or arduous. She has been a rock for her clients, family, friends, and her city. She is not above the Columbus and Usuli community. She is one of us, and we claim her with great pride and hope. She represents all that we have felt as Palestinians and Muslims this past year and gifted us with the inspiration to excel in our advocacy and in our family life. She reminds us that to serve God is to serve justice, and that that is the greatest calling of a Muslim. And above all, she is beloved, and she has shown that she loves us back even harder. It is for these reasons that we at the Usuli Institute hereby award the inaugural Usuli Human Award to Jana Al-Akhras, Free Palestine. You witnessed it yourself. She's amazing.
You're all so unbelievably kind. Grace, so unbelievably kind. I'm just really, really honored to be in this space with a group of people that I truly believe are principled and have their finger on the pulse of what needs to be done. I don't necessarily know if I deserve this award, but I appreciate all of you. I appreciate you listening to my words, and I'm so thankful for Usuli offering a platform in a time in which nobody else was doing the courageous work that needed to be done, and I'm really, really grateful for that. Thank you.
Wow. Jana always, before doing something for Usuli, is always like nervous, anxious. I mean, not nervous or anxious, but she's worried she's not gonna do well, and then she comes and, as usual, blows everyone out of the water. So I think it's definitely no surprise if anyone involved at Usuli deserved this award. It's Jana Al-Akhras for sure. The next person I want to introduce. This is the one time anyone will ever hear me being kind to Dalia. But I have to be kind to her because, you know, I really do consider her like a sister. She would graciously host me at her house every time I had to do these weekly drives back and forth from Columbus to Princeton, and put up with me even when I locked her out of her house a couple of times. So Dalia is now full-time at Usuli, one of the future members who is really talented, and she's also not someone who you want to get on her bad side. She's a triple black belt, and she knows this thing called the kidney stomp, which sounds really violent and painful, and I think she's been looking forward to actually having to use it on someone. So that's also why I'm being nice right now. But I want to welcome her up on stage.
I'm really not used to nice Rami. It's like actually really unnerving. But so I'm actually here to present an award. So I'm going to say some words that may sound a little familiar in the beginning. But the typical award is meant to honor and distinguish an individual by the excellence of their achievements, be it in sports, science, or the arts. Far less common is the award that honors an insistence on rising above hardship with dignity, strength, and the perseverance representing us all as a society. This award is neither of those. In fact, this award is the worst award anyone could possibly win. And actually, it doesn't feel right to present this award alone, and for that, I'd like to bring Sharif up to present this dishonor with me.
We do the PowerPoint, please. Once I saw the answer to our survey, I could not resist accepting Delia's invitation. I'm sure you can all guess who wrote this. Nominations for the Worst Person Award included Benjamin Netanyahu, Donald Trump, Abdul Fattah al-Sisi, and Taylor Swift for the damage that they have done to their respective cultures. However, one figure stood out above the rest. This is a man who has dedicated himself to takfiring his colleagues, calling them unbelievers while living in their basement, to finish his PhD and hijacking their PlayStation 5.
Despite being the least talented member of the Usuli community, he has routinely subjected us all to his monotonous poetry that is second only to Rupi Kaur in its inseparableness. After having his poetry book rejected by every publisher imaginable, he self-published his Ohioan Openings, which is unsurprisingly full of basic errors, wasting valuable paper in the midst of a climate crisis. He has held the Usuli community hostage to his meaningless musings about ketchup.
Ketchup comes from tomatoes, right? Tomatoes are native to Central and South America. They were taken by European colonizers to Europe and converted into a sauce. That makes ketchup a colonial sauce. And Sheikh, I keep telling you this, I know it's your favorite sauce, but I have to speak truth.
He had an insistence that playing Call of Duty online with strangers classifies as struggling in the way of God. On one of the many nights that he badgered players online to talk to him due to his insatiable desire for attention, he made a child cry. After accusing the parents of child negligence for allowing him to play a mature-rated game. He proceeded to berate the father of the child when he came on the line to defend his son. And this is a true story. This man has taken it upon himself to terrorize each and every guest we have ever had at Usuli in the hopes of making them feel as unwanted as humanly possible. Sometimes when we wonder about our low view count on YouTube and lack of popularity, we needn't look further than this man's sociopathic behavior, which is truly the opposite of a shining example of everything that Usuli strives to bring into the world. Nonetheless, we have been forced to keep him around as a service and mercy to mankind, so as to shield the world from him and mitigate the damage he might cause elsewhere. It is a wonder to us all how his wife can be such a kind person, married to someone so unabashedly unpleasant. Olivia, I love you, but you know that he brought this upon himself. If you need help, please blink twice.
As for the harm that I have suffered at his hand personally, he has crashed at my family home too many times to count. He's mooched off of my parents for survival. And as he has mentioned, he's done this all while having the gall to lock me out of my own home in the freezing cold whenever I'd come home from work. And then on one Halloween, he asked...
Sorry, I went too fast.
Yeah, we're having a spoiler alert here, sorry. One Halloween, he asked me to please wear a costume so he would not have to look at my face. And another time, when I had asked if he had eaten out of kind concern, he replied, "Yes, of course I ate earlier, because when I see your face, I lose my appetite." And that isn't even half of it.
The day this man moved out of his family home was the happiest day of his parents' lives. We highly suspect that his dissertation advisors gave him his PhD simply for the sake of getting him the heck out of Princeton. We too are hoping that by giving him this award, he will finally leave us alone. This is why the Worst Person Award goes to Dr. Rami Kuja.
This is truly such an honor. To know the effect that I've had on these people's lives. Really, I mean, subhanAllah, you think you are going around helping people by bringing attention to their flaws and their faults, and you get an award from it. I mean, so I'm just so moved. I'm so touched, alhamdulillah. But you have to admit that those were some pretty good insults. I mean, losing the appetite, wearing a costume. Thank you so much. I really don't know what to say. Rashda, I hope you're happy that you've seen the justice that's been done. Do I deserve it? I deserve to be awarded, yes. Worst person, I mean, yeah, I'm gonna leave that for Allah to judge, inshallah. But thank you so much. Thank you so much all for putting up with me. I mean, Rashda was right that a lot of you were just thrown into my sense of humor without any preparation or warning, and I like it that way. I think it's funnier. That's thank you very much. All right, and now I want to invite Dr. Nader Hashemi up on stage. Thank you.
Okay, assalamu alaikum, everyone. This has been a wonderful conference. Thank you, first of all, to the Usuli Institute for bringing us all together. This is the start of something very important, and we'd like it very much to continue, and that's why they've asked me to come at the end here to say a few words. My job, in case you haven't guessed already, is fundraising. So no one can leave this room until we raise $1 million, and we're gonna all sit here until it's done. And the good news is that I'm sitting at a table with a lot of brothers and sisters from Saudi Arabia. And we can all go home very quickly if they just pull out their checkbooks and do what they need to do, and then we'll end this conference on a high note. Unfortunately, Khalid has scared away all of the rich Egyptians, and I wish he would have waited until after the fundraising portion before he insulted them, because certainly they deserve to be insulted, but only after they share with us some of their wealth so we can put it to good purposes. The good news about the fundraising is that we have a big incentive. It was announced that someone has come forward, mashallah, to match donations up to $50,000. And 65,000, up to 65,000. So any contribution that you give up to $65,000 will be matched. So that's going to make tonight's fundraising much easier. A conference like this doesn't come cheaply. So that's, I think, an obvious point. A lot of resources were spent. Think about whether you found this weekend worth your time, worth your effort. I just want to reiterate how the Usuli Institute here is something that's truly unique. It's a project that doesn't exist anywhere else, and it can't survive unless all of us contribute financially. And those of us who've been involved in this type of educational activity in the past when it comes to raising money for educational projects in the Muslim community always know it's an uphill battle. Unfortunately, culturally speaking, historically speaking, people who come from our part of the world, the non-Western part of the world, the Islamic part of the world, it's culturally not part of the norm to give money to educational institutions, because most of our countries back home, it's the government that spends everything, and there's not an appreciation for the good things that can come by investing in education and in intellectual projects. Those of us who've spent time in the university system, we're always frustrated and sort of very upset because we see other communities doing this with huge amounts of success. I was just telling Khalid this afternoon about someone who came to visit me. He was a scholar from Israel who was thinking of coming to the University of Denver, where I used to teach, for a sabbatical. And he asked if he could sort of have some sort of affiliation with the center that I was directing. And I say, yeah, theoretically it might work out. We could host you, but we have no money. And he said, oh, don't worry about the money. There's a special fund here, a special project here in the United States that any visiting Israeli scholar who wants to come to the United States for their sabbatical, all their expenses will be paid. Where's the equivalent research fund support system for Muslim scholars? The sad reality is it doesn't exist. And the way that the American Jewish community has done it, and full power to them, is it's come through private money. People who appreciate the value of investing in their community and reaping the rewards as a result. And so this is something that, I think we have to still work at. I was actually quite intrigued. In fact, a light turned on in my head when Khalid mentioned that the model for the Usuli Institute was the Ismaili Institute in London. That sort of, if you're familiar with that sort of project, the resources that they have, the university they set up, the publications that they put out, all to sort of further and foster the education of Ismaili studies writ large. This is sort of it's been a very successful model for them. I think it can be reproduced, but it doesn't come on the cheap. And so, this is a difficult moment. The other sort of observation I would make is that in the year that's passed since October the 7th, the amount of money that has been spent by right-wing pro-Israel groups in the university setting is astounding. $100 million Bill Ackman gave to Harvard University, was threatening to pull it out unless they cracked down on student protests. Another person, $50 million. I was just reading the news and stumbled across a case in Canada, University of Manitoba. Someone had given $30 million to the university, was threatening to pull it out because there was a video that was posted on the university website where a young graduate of the school was saying something in support of Palestinian rights. Using that type of influence to sort of pursue a particular agenda. Now, our agenda isn't a sinister pro-Israel agenda rooted in occupation, apartheid, and now genocide. That's not what we're about. We're interested in exactly the opposite. An ethical interpretation of Islam that is rooted in preserving the Islamic tradition, but at the same time is deeply connected with our modern contemporary world, the challenges that go with it, with democracy, human rights, and how to create a just society. And so that's why the Usuli Institute is so unique, it's so important, and it can't exist and can't continue unless there is strong financial support. And so that's where I'm going to ask each of you to think deeply. You have these QR codes on your tables. You can go online and donate. And so I'm assuming that I don't want to call on people's names here. I've been to fundraising dinners before, and there would be someone who would stand up and point to someone and say, brother, Muhammad, you're a physician, a specialist. You must be pulling in at least $300,000 to $400,000 a year easily. Take out your checkbook. We need you to write a $20,000 donation now. I'm not going to do that, but I am going to encourage you to sort of think deeply about what you experienced this weekend. And it's been very impressive. One of the good things about this conference is every time I meet someone, I ask them, well, how did you discover the Usuli Institute? How did you discover the work of Khalid Abu Fadl? Where are you coming from? And people are coming from, long distances. Chile, Australia, different parts of the United States, driving many hours, paying their own travel bills. So that's a good sign that people are willing to invest in this project. The challenge is how do we keep it going and how do we keep it thriving? I was very touched by what Khalid said in his last set of remarks when he talked about his dream of sort of training young students in the tradition that he's been trained in and pushing them to excel and reach their full potential. Some of them even, having anxiety attacks, but that's part of the learning process. And he hasn't been able to do that. Well, if we had the resources to fund and host and provide scholarships and postdoctoral fellowships, these are things that can happen. There's a lot of, I'm in academia, so I know there's a lot of really young, bright Muslims who graduate from top schools doing excellent work, and they struggle to get jobs in the job market. It's a very tough job market. I remember one case at my previous university. I was the head of a search committee. We had one position. We got 200 applications. Half of those applications weren't serious, but at least a good quarter of those applications were really serious, and this is the reality of academia. Wouldn't it be great if we had resources at the Usuli Institute to help smart, bright, young PhD students or even graduate students going through their graduate program to finish their work, not have to worry about their financial stability until they can finally get a job? These are the things that we need to invest in. And it's going to only happen if no government is going to come and to our rescue. It's going to come from private donations from people who realize the value of what's been done here. And what's so important for me and why why I'm here today, why I've stayed in touch with Grace and Khalid all these years is, it's not an exaggeration to say that Khalid Abu Fadl is one of those people who comes around once every 100 years and has a unique set of talents and a unique set of gifts and has a support team and can really provide and can really transform an entire sort of community in terms of his intellectual gifts. And the more we can support the work of the Usuli Institute, the more I think Khalid can have his legacy enhanced, preserved, and passed on. Because at the end of the day, we all are finite human beings. At some point, all of us will have to depart this world. And so one of the big, important, I think, contributions that a scholar such as Khalid can make is the legacy he leaves behind, the students that he's nurtured, the students that he's trained. One of the great scholars in this tradition of, I would call broadly, Islamic ethics that deeply influenced me when I was growing up was the late, great Fazlur Rahman. If you know his, major themes of the Quran, his book on Islam, his great work on Islam and modernity. Fazlur Rahman was one of those brilliant minds who had to flee Pakistan in the 1960s. He ended up at the University of Chicago, and he's known now largely because of the legacy of the students that he's trained and who have all gone on to make big names for themselves in Islamic studies. Temhar Hassan, Michael Sells, many others. This is something that I think we need to nurture here in the context of the Usuli Institute by supporting their work, supporting students who can come here, supporting graduate students who can carry on this tradition. But none of that is going to be possible unless you all sort of think about how you can support this project. I think, and I'm of the view, and Khalid's here, he can overrule me, but I think giving money to the Usuli Institute should be considered as part of your zakat. We have to give, as part of our annual donations, our responsibility as Muslims, a certain percentage of our money that we make every year. Why not to the Usuli Institute? I think this is a project that's rooted in, the best of Islamic ethics, rooted in a firm commitment to truth, to justice, and to Islam. And so I'm hoping that you can also contribute. I'm told that you also get a tax receipt, so you can claim it on your taxes. So instead of paying money to the government, you can contribute it to this cause. And so I'd ask you all to take those QR codes and be as generous as you can. We have this matching donation, and I'm not going to stop talking until we raise that $1 million. So I don't see people reaching for these QR codes. Everyone is sort of just looking at other tables, wondering if other people are going to contribute. So we've been chatting about next year, actually, what we're going to do next year. Should we have the conference here in Columbus again? Should we maybe take the conference to a bigger city where there's a huge Muslim community, like, in my case, Washington, D.C., Georgetown, obviously UCLA, Los Angeles, where Khalid is, based and connected. Maybe Chicago or New York. These are all possibilities, but none of that can be possible. We can't think of next year's conference unless there is financial support for this conference and for what the Usuli Institute is all about. So thank you for listening. Please be generous. Allah will reward you both in this life and for sure in the next life. The more generous you are, the more rewards you will get, inshallah. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm so sad because, as I said yesterday, we're going to blink and we're going to be at the end. So this is the end of our programming for tonight. This has been such a precious time. I don't want it to end. So please feel free to stay, move here to Columbus, be with us. That's my secret mission, is to get everyone we love to come move to Columbus. And it's really wonderful. I mean, it's actually, the quality of life here is just amazing. So much better than the traffic in LA, and no wildfires and all of that. No drought, which is huge. But I hope that, like this, to me, I've been to Islamic conferences before. And actually, when I was a convert and I first went, it was horrifying. I didn't really quite know. It just felt like I was in a foreign country, and anyone said resonated with me. And I'm so proud to see what we were able to do today. I mean, even, Eric, the sound guy, has been doing this for how many years? 30? Over 30 years. He says he works corporate events, and for a first-time event, he said we did an incredible job. So thank you for telling us that. But it feels so good to come and be part of a space and a community and see things well run and professionally. And for that, I have to thank the Usuli team, and especially at the top of that list, our son, Sharif Abul Fadl. Where's Sharif? Is he here? Right in front of me. I'm like looking, okay. Sharif really lived and breathed and dreamed about every little detail. And so when you see the little touches, the expressions of love and whatever it is that you see it, it's there. And the team, Shireen, Parveen, Cheyenne, Dalia, Rami, Olivia, everybody, who's part of Usuli and gave time and love and energy, this is the result. And so it's very inspiring, because when you start thinking like, what can you actually create when you get great people with great minds and a lot of passion. Like in our new space, I was really touched that every time we came together to try and figure out how to solve a problem, we actually would always come up with some kind of magical solution that none of us could have figured out without the others. And it happened so often that it was just like, okay, there's something really magical here. So to see it come to life in this space, and then to see the relationships that are forming here, the friendships that people, saying that I've met, everyone here is so kind and wonderful. And even when I've had a conversation, it's like when I look at people, I feel like I'm among family, right? It's like the way that we look at one another is like family. So that's a blessing, and I'm so grateful for that. And I really pray that you guys will join us, inshallah, for our second annual conference. But, take the relationships you've found here and build them into something really beautiful. And I hope that the learning, the love, the connection is something that we can pass on to our kids. And thank you, Rashta, for bringing your kids. And thank you, Iman and Noah, for staying, and Mido for staying, and Dalal, the next generation. Thank you for being here, because that's a vote for, man, this was so boring, get me out of here, right? Okay, they stayed. So that's, really wonderful. So really, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for, if someone could tally the miles and the hours traveled to get here, I'm sure it would be a huge, huge number. And we're so grateful for that. May Allah bless you. I know that people get rewarded when they go and journey in seeking knowledge. And so thank you from the bottom of my heart on behalf of everyone. So I hope you have a wonderful rest of the evening. And I think we can be here until 9:30-ish? But that's just in this space. Of course, the night is young. Thank you so much, everybody.